We are live at the Apocalypse Cabin. Greetings and salutations, friends, and welcome back to Truthseekers. Usually, we explore some of the strangest and most mysterious stories on planet Earth. But lately, I've been thinking that current events have been the strangest and most mysterious thing lately. Some time ago, while living in a major city, Philadelphia, I began to see signs of, let's just say, an uneasiness in the citizenry of the major city I lived in. It seemed to me that it wouldn't take much for a major event to happen and cause, let's just say, disruption in our usual lives. I'm not quite sure why, but I began to worry about this as the crime rate in our local area of the city, the neighborhood that I lived in, started steadily rising. And I don't mean just thefts, I mean murders and violent crime and rapes and carjackings and shootings and all manner of scary things. Now, I thought I'd live in the city my entire life. In fact, I was always sure of it. I grew up in a city. It was what I was used to. It was what I was comfortable with. But having started a family, I couldn't look at my children playing outside and feel good about where I was living, where I was raising them. Uh, it just didn't feel good that I have these innocent, impressionable children, and the area where we're living is becoming increasingly unsafe. So, I had a lot invested in our property in the city. I had a big house, big for the city, um, and I had a big yard, which is weird for the city, and a recording studio next to the house, which I slowly built over time in a separate building, and a big driveway, a four-car driveway. In the city, a four-car driveway, really? Yeah. Um, so it turned out that people still saw value in that real estate. Uh, People that, like me, just think they're going to live in the city forever. So we sold everything and moved to the suburbs. And for a time, I felt better. At my new house, you can do things I could never do in the city, like leave your car door unlocked and nobody would mess with your car at night, right? It's the little things that matter. In fact, it didn't take long, and my wife started to joke, "Oh my God, you're turning suburban," because she had found that I left my car open and left my wallet and my cell phone in the passenger side seat. This is something you could never do in the city. Even if your car was locked, somebody would break your window and take that in a matter of hours. So things had improved, and my uneasiness about this strange premonition, maybe, that I had that things in the city would not be good and that I had to get out, I strongly felt that. So that moving gave me for a time a sense of peace, and I became more relaxed, less stressed out. City stress is something that people that don't have never lived in a major city, it's hard to even explain it. But city stress is things like somebody parking in your driveway and blocking your car almost every day. And you got to go and find whose car is blocking your driveway so you can go to work that day. And it happened all the time. All the time this happened to me in the city. Or gee, somebody broke my window to steal the CDs I left on the passenger seat. And now I have to go and, spend $100 to get my window replaced. These city stresses accumulated in me over time. And there's so many more examples that I could give you from, your neighbor blasting terrible music until 3 o'clock in the morning. And by the way, that's the neighbor that you share a wall with. To one of the other things that was funny is that we had a neighbor that for years, there was somebody banging, sawing, and doing something. I guess she was getting her house remodeled, but it was only on the weekends. It was like she hired a guy who was moonlighting, like he worked all week, and then he would come to her house and work on her house on the weekends. So we would work all week, and then finally, it's the weekend. Maybe we can relax at home, but we can't because they're sawing, banging all day, all night, 12 hours a day. And that was for like a year and a half. This is the kind of city stresses that I'm talking about. And a lot of this comes from everybody being too closely packed in together. That's the way a city works. Look at New York. It's crazy. You got 100-story buildings and people are just packed in on top of one another. This, my friends, is not a natural way for a human being to live. It's just my opinion. Having done it, I don't think it was natural. And I was glad to get out of the city. For a time, I began relaxing a little more, and my guard really did come down. And it was amazing to me, being a hardened city person who was used to arguing over things like parking spots and get out of my driveway, you asshole, don't park there again. It was interesting for me to see how quickly I became much more of a relaxed person. I didn't have to, nobody ever blocks my driveway at my new house, which, by the way, is a 4-car driveway by chance. But that's because everybody else around me has the same 4-car driveway. They don't need to, park in your driveway. And everyone is a bit more spread out in the suburbs. So, yeah, I let my guard down and I started becoming more and more relaxed. And then COVID hit, and my anxiety level went through the roof, literally through the roof. Um, I have a son who has asthma. I have some pre-existent medical conditions which cause me to be a high risk, or I would be, I suppose, considered high risk for serious complications if I should contract this terrible COVID-19. And plus, my son has got asthma. I have another child, of course, and boy, it really scared me. And I shut myself in pretty good. Being naturally the kind of like a stay-at-home person, like I used to. When I was younger, I went out all the time. I mean, I even ran a nightclub for a time. But now I would much prefer to just stay home anyway. But this COVID thing forced me into just self-isolation. I was there with my family, but that was it. And it's interesting how COVID changed the family dynamics. My wife was incredibly close, is incredibly close to her mother and her brothers and sisters for 87 days, I think. My wife did not visit her mother or her family at all. The only places we went were the supermarket, and I went to Lowe's to get materials here for the cabin. That's it. Oh, and gasoline. But yeah, that's it. And it's interesting that the neighborhood, the neighborhood I mentioned, where the crime rate started going through the roof, and I had to get out of and get my family out of. I watched on television on my birthday this year. I watched my neighborhood burn on my birthday. That was the neighborhood that I grew up in. That was the neighborhood my house was in, that we just moved from. And it was a sad thing to see that level of lawlessness, that level of anarchy. I mean, people were literally just burning storefronts, smashing through windows, grabbing whatever they could, and looting everything. Most of the stores in the area of that neighborhood were all looted. A few survived due to private security uh, with long guns. Like there was a few, I believe Target and a few other of the more Target, Walmart, Home Depot, and a few of the other big box stores um, hired armed security guards and a gaggle of them to stand in front of the building with guns and make sure that nobody did that to their buildings. And since I've mentioned the big box stores, I just don't understand. I don't understand the lockdown. I don't understand the quarantine. I don't understand how it's safe to go to Walmart, Home Depot, or Target, but it's not safe to go to my local barber shop. I've had COVID hair for 90 days or more, right? I'm cutting my own hair. It's not safe to go to the barber. Um, the local businesses are all being decimated and destroyed in our country right now. Every local business, every sole propriety, the small, not corporately owned. I mean, the mom and pop shops, Joe's record store, the captain's comic shop, Jenny's beauty salon down the street. They just have to close for 3, 4, 5 months, who knows, and hope that they can still somehow feed their families. But yet, the big box, big, huge corporations, for them, business is booming because every local competition that they have has just been completely and totally stamped out by our government. I find that more than a little bit suspect. I find it more than a little bit suspect. But I don't want to get into conspiracies involving our current health crisis. It's just not a good idea to go there. Uh, but here's what I'll say. If the dials of what just happened, what we all just went through and are still going through, if the dials of this whole situation were turned just a little bit worse, just a little bit, we could have seen massive, massive anarchy that would make what we just went through look like nothing. And here's why. If just a few more meat plants, food processing plants, had to shut down due to health concerns or due to high infection rates or due to too many people getting sick and not enough people on the line to produce this food, what about there could be an outbreak amongst transportation workers who bring all that food into these major cities? Healthcare workers. More healthcare workers could have gotten sick, and there would be less qualified healthcare workers to take care of those who were going to the hospital, going to emergency rooms with COVID symptoms, unable to breathe. There is a smorgasbord of things that could have happened if the dials of this whole event just turned a little worse, a little bit worse, right? As bad as all of this was, it could have been much, much worse. Here's the deal, and people don't realize this. Largely, people don't realize this. We all live very comfortable lives where we can go to the store and buy whatever we want, usually. During the crisis here, the health crisis, we saw just how fragile that system is because suddenly there were things like meat shortages. You couldn't buy yeast anywhere, anywhere. Not at Walmart, not at your local supermarket. Amazon was all sold out of yeast. That struck me as strange. Why would the major ingredient, the one of two or three major ingredients to make simple bread, suddenly be unavailable? And I saw other signs that I didn't like during this crisis, which was Walmart and Home Depot, for a time in many states, sectioned off the garden section, and you were unable to buy seeds. That struck me as more than a little strange. But again, not to go too far into any conspiracy theories surrounding current events, these are just things that I noticed and was terribly concerned with. I mentioned that I was getting very comfortable in my suburban life, my comfortable, big, huge house, nice yard, suburban life. And then this COVID thing hit, and all of these signs started appearing to me. And I became increasingly worried again that things could turn terrible. Here's one scenario. If there's a food shortage, there is only 3 days worth of food in a supermarket on average. They have 18-wheeler trucks delivering food every day to them, to these supermarkets, to these Walmart supercenters. Okay? So if there is a further breakdown in our system, and we've all seen through this system how fragile this whole house of cards is. If there is problems with either the food processing plants or the transportation companies that move all of this food, that would be a huge problem. Did you see the lawlessness, the anarchy, and the rioting and the looting, right? What if that was started happening because there was no food available to purchase? We can quickly see how that could turn ugly. Hunger could cause anarchy very quickly. Hunger will break down every societal norm, uh, every accepted way of behavior in our society is destroyed by someone who is very hungry, who has a family that is very hungry, and he has to somehow feed that family. So I began to think it's great to be here in the suburbs, because if there is large scale rioting and looting or food shortages, the major chaos, the major anarchy, the major problems are going to be in the cities first. That population density, with only a few days of food for everyone in that major city, could cause a tremendous problem. It could erupt very easily into total chaos, murder in the streets over a loaf of bread. Now, if I sound alarmist, I apologized. This is, after all, just my thinking. You may disagree and think everything, everybody, if there's a food shortage, will just come together, share food with each other, and sing kumbaya around a campfire. I don't think that's the way humans work. I just don't. One of the other signs, that more chaos may be on the way for us is the mass exodus right now from the cities. And none of the media is really reporting on this, or they're just glancing over it, mentioning it. By the way, the Upper East Side of Manhattan is down to 30% of its previous population since COVID started. And most of those wealthy people have moved to their house in the Hamptons full time and will not be returning. Is that a coincidence that people with means, money, and opportunity are rushing out of the cities? Or do they know something that us poor folks don't? Maybe more chaos is coming. I hope I'm wrong. But in the event that more chaos is coming, I wanted to have a clear conscience in knowing that I at least spoke up and tried to give a warning. And if I'm wrong, people can laugh at me a year from now. I believe that some more chaos and chaotic events are coming our way before this shit show called 2020 is over. There is also more signs of chaos to come, or at least more signs of, let's call it fear. There is tremendous fear about future events in our collective consciousness right now that may be causing some of this mass exodus from the cities. People feel safer somewhere else, off in the woods, off in the mountains. You know, I, for one, am thankful to have this cabin, which I built to have a place to escape to should the worst come. It is entirely possible that when these elections happen, that neither side will accept the results. If that happens, we could see more mass rioting, looting, vehicles on fire, vehicles being flipped over, chaos, anarchy, tear gas, riot gear, police beating people. It could get ugly. If the election results, either way, if if the Democrats win, all of these Trump supporting people are not going to go away quietly. They're going to claim election fraud and all kinds of things. And conversely, if Trump wins, I think it might be worse, because what we're seeing from a lot of the rioting and looting is really the more liberal side of people that are doing the rioting, the looting, the anarchy, taking over part of a city, claiming it as their own. We may see chaos that makes what we've just been through look like nothing. And it may go on and on and on. For these reasons, I recommend that everyone that I know, especially if you live in a major city, find a place that you can go in the event of turmoil, in the event of murder in the streets and it just not being a safe place. I heard from friends in my neighborhood in Philadelphia, and when that rioting, looting, and burning of buildings was going on, realized that people were in their houses with all the doors locked, looking out their window, scared to death, because there was reports on Facebook that, okay, we've cleaned out all the stores. Now let's go get these people's houses next. They all got money and big screen TVs, just regular working people neighborhood. But this is what people were saying on Facebook. And I know neighbors and friends, family who were in their houses, terrified, hearing these reports on Facebook. People were posting, we've got the stores, let's get in their homes next and take what we can. Didn't happen. A few break-ins were attempted and thwarted, but it could have easily spread to people's houses. So if you live in the city, I would suggest that you find an alternate location. Prepper people call it a bug out location. I'm not, believe it or not, I don't consider myself a prepper or anything like that. I'm just concerned with current events and want to keep my family safe and make sure that we'll be fed and secure no matter what comes next. But yeah, it's commonly called a bug out location, and ours is here. We have this really nice cabin. We have a way to heat the cabin just with local materials. It's all this is all heated by wood. This cabin, so we have a wood stove in the other room. We have a wood stove over here, and which, by the way, we also can cook on. I'm not sure what I can tell you if you don't have a place, a safe place off in the country somewhere, out of the city and even out of the suburbs. I'm living in the suburbs now, but also I was talking about the lawlessness in the cities. If it pops off really badly in the cities, they're going to come to the suburbs next. We saw a little bit of that in my area because some of these groups that had raided and looted the stores and some of the stores in Philadelphia were planning protests in our local area and things like that. Uh, but long story short, the people in that area were going to stand there with guns and not allow any damage to come to the stores. Suddenly, the protests were canceled. And there was chatter on social media like, they're not going to let us loot up there, which I found very interesting. So, but my point is, if things pop off and get terrible in the cities, it's going to spill over right into the suburbs next. They're going to loot all of the stores in the city when there's nothing left to gain in the city, or if there's a food shortage, people will loot every place that has food in the city. And once that runs out, they're going to start going over to the suburbs, looting, stealing, and it may not just be businesses. They may be going house to house. For all we know, that could happen. For this reason, I think the safest place to be in the event of large scale turmoil going forward is someplace out in the mountains, out in the woods, out in the country, out in, the farm area of your state, wherever that would be. Because people will be so far spread out, it will be difficult. It's going to be very difficult for anybody to get to you from a major city, first of all, or from the suburbs, even. At least in our situation here, it is. So you'll have a safe place to go with your family. And I, for one, am glad that I have one. And I hope that you do too. Um, some things that you should have: light sources. We have uh, oil lamps here in the event of power failure. We have a small solar system that I've been experimenting with that we could use in the event of a power failure. We have, and that has 12-volt lights. This cabin is wired for 12 volts and 120 volts. So we have, uh, I can hook a car battery up to the lighting system in here and run the lights for days. They're very energy efficient. But you should have candles. You should have some oil lamps. We have those here. Um, you should have electric lights, flashlights. You're going to need light. You're always going to need light. Make sure you have plenty of light source. The secondary thing that I think is most important is a heat source, especially if you live in a climate where it gets cold. We have plenty of heat sources here in the form of wood burning stoves. I highly recommend them because they're so versatile, they're so easy to use, and easy to fuel. Especially if you're anywhere near the woods, and I am. There's just wood everywhere. You'll never be cold. Well, you might be cold if you run out of firewood and you're outside chopping wood like I was this winter. But my point is, you have a good way to keep your family warm. I mean, you've got to keep your family warm, and I think I always feel like it is a man's responsibility to make sure that everybody's warm and safe. And so for one, I love wood stoves. They give me a comforting feeling, and they make me feel like a good provider. At home, we have a wood stove in the fireplace, a wood stove with a blower. And the whole family comes and we gather around the fire and sit there, and it's in the middle of cold, freezing winter. It's awesome. and it makes me feel good that I can keep my family warm and safe. And just something I wanted to share. Wood stove is an absolute necessity in the event of the apocalypse. You're going to want one, and you can get a very cheap one. And yeah, they're the range anywhere from $100 to like thousands of dollars. Um, you're going to want stored food. I would recommend that you have 6 months of food available to you. And by storable food, I don't mean, fresh meat and produce. That's not going to help you in a long-term situation. I mean things like 50-pound bags of rice, 50-pound bags of beans, 50-pound bags of flour, bulk items that you can use to survive in the event of a food shortage or something else. You're going to need a water source. I'm very fortunate in that we have a community well here, which is clean and tested and safe, clean drinking water. Um, Failing that, I have several neighbors here who have their own wells on their property, and I know them well enough to know that if my family was here and it was like a shit hit the fan, and I'm now living here with my family, they would help me and help me to get water. Besides that, we have several water filtration systems here. I could go literally get water from a puddle of mud, and it would be filtered down to safe, clean drinking water. I recommend a Berkey filter. So these are some things that you're going to need. Now, once the bare necessities of life in your apocalypse cabin are handled, like light source, a heat source, a food source, and a water source, a power source would also be good. But I mentioned they sell very small solar power setups. Some of them are called like solar generator or portable solar generator, and they'll come with a solar panel and a box with the battery in it and inverter so you can plug in like a laptop or small low wattage devices. Um, we have a big inverter here and these huge golf cart batteries. Um, so power is good to have so that you can still maintain some level of sanity. Uh, you know, uh, Maybe doing things like watching movies once in a while would be good. And you never know if there's a big societal breakdown, what could happen. There could be no internet, there could be no power, there could be no public utilities, water, sewer. Here we have a composting toilet, which sounds strange, but it's much better than any other system that I have found for sort of off grid living. Uh, it's a strange thing. It separates one and two. You get a tank for one, and then two goes into this big drum, which gets spun with cedar shavings, and yeah, and eventually the one just breaks down into dirt, just dirt, or compost. So that's a way of managing that. But what I'm saying is, after the necessities are handled for everything that you're going to need, I highly recommend that you have a big, huge bookshelf full of books. In the event that there's a major breakdown of things, you're going to be bored as shit. You're going to need something to do. You're going to want some form of entertainment too. And I, for one, think books can. I could stay busy with a huge bookshelf full of books for as long as it took me to read them all. So have a big bookshelf full of books. I mentioned watching movies once in a while. I think the cabin here is a good place to go store old physical medium. That none of us need physical medium anymore, right? You don't need CDs, you don't need DVDs. Everything is streaming now. But those old things may come in handy in the event of a terrible situation like a societal breakdown and the apocalypse happening. You're going to want to watch a movie once in a while. You're going to want to listen to some music. Radio may no longer function. But one of the things that I recommend is a good radio. Radio should stay on, I guess. If the power stays on, there would be at least some radio station still operating. But you can't depend on that. anything could happen. So I would have CDs, records, tapes, whatever you want, and a means to play them. I'm trying to think of a few other things I would recommend. I can't really think off the top of my head. Oh, you're gonna have to have plenty of sources for fire. You're gonna need fire in your life. We're gonna all, if this, if things go the way that I think, we're all gonna have to learn to become better friends with this thing called fire. You're gonna need to start fires, cook on fires. Yeah. So make sure that you have an ample supply of matches, lighters, barbecue grill lighters. Propane is another big deal. If you can get a propane burner and some of those propane tanks, that may keep you cooking. Uh, but I recommend that you learn to cook on a wood fire because propane is going to run out and you're not going to be able to use propane. But propane can also come in handy as a backup heat source. We have a propane fireplace here, and I have a big tank outside for the propane fireplace. Uh, that is really just for backup for me. If I come here and let's say, let's say a storm knocks the stovepipe down and I can't use the wood stove, then I have the propane stove for backup until we can fix that or get it working. Or, but generally we don't have any problems. It's also good. The propane fireplace that we have, excuse me, friends, is also good because if I come here and it's freezing cold, the wood stove takes an hour or two to heat this place up. If it's, especially if it's 10 outside, it might take 3 4 hours. So the propane fireplace, boom, instant warm. I would recommend some kind of propane heater. There's something called a little buddy. uh, that's good, but again, wood fire is much better to cook on. Wood wood heat source is much more dependable in a bad situation because you can always find wood. You may not be able to find propane. If the worst happens, all the stores will be closed or looted. So, friends, am I just a little paranoid? I used to have a friend who uh, he smoked a lot, and one of our mutual friends and I were with him, and my mutual friend said to him, you're really, really paranoid. And he said, but that's okay, bro, because paranoia is just heightened awareness. And that always stuck with me when I think, am I being paranoid about this? Or perhaps is my awareness just heightened? Maybe I'm just on edge and I'm fearing the worst, having been through this shitstorm so far. Things, it seemed for a while like, all right, things are getting better. We're going to open it up. This quarantine's going to be over. Oh, shit. Now they're closing everything back down because there's spikes in cases. And there's other signs, friends, that things are going to get crazy. I just read that a mayor, is it a mayor in California, is arresting people for having gatherings at their houses. That's crazy. And we've seen a lot more examples of this kind of strange authoritarianism. Does anybody naive enough to think they're just going to give all this power back after this vaccine, I guess, is developed and available? Or are we heading towards literally a George Orwell, 1984? Are we heading that way? I'd like to think that I'm not crazy. I'd like to think maybe I'm being a little paranoid, but it's best to plan ahead. It's best to do the things I need to do to take care of my family, to be sure that my children and my wife will be safe in the event of a societal breakdown that I feel may be coming. One other thing that I'd just like to mention is that I do check in with some like prepper YouTube channels because they are interested in some of the, you know, camping gear and same things that I am. Um, so I have seen uh, a great deal of concern among these prepper people that something big is coming. And maybe that has influenced me and created more fear in me that I better make sure the cabin's well stocked up just in case. And so here I am at the apocalypse cabin. Uh, Today, I'm supposed to be doing some work outside, but it rained on and off all day. So I did some other things inside the cabin that I've been putting off. I can tell you that maybe, just maybe, having this cabin gives me a form of comfort as a man because I know if the worst ever comes, I can bring my family here and they'll be safe. And there's plenty of protein walking around here in these woods around the cabin. My family would not be hungry no matter what comes. I would see to that. So maybe it just gives me comfort to have the cabin just in case. You know, a wiser man than me. Uh, now, what I was going to say is, I just don't want to feel paranoid, but I feel like I have been seeing these warning signs for some time and feeling like I better react to those warning signs because how am I going to feel as a father and as a man if I don't do something now, seeing warning signs left and right? How am I going to feel later for ignoring those warning signs if they are indeed warning signs? And a wiser man than me, Trent Reznor, once said in a song, some say it was a warning, some say it was a sign, but it was up to us to decide. And with that, friends, I will turn my full attention to the live chat. And I'm sorry if this I'm sorry if this whole thing comes off as one big downer, but here's the deal, and I feel this way very strongly, honest to God. If something bad happens, if there is a major event, societal breakdown, anything like that happens, I want to have a clear conscience and say, I put my thoughts out there and I think that people should prepare just in case. And you know what? Can't hurt to have those things around that I mentioned, right? If you're going to stay in place where you're at, you should have some of those things. So, you know, it's good to have those things. And I'll feel good later knowing that I maybe opened some people's eyes and got them to be better prepared for what may come. Okay, friends. So I'm going to turn my total attention to the live chat. If you have any questions for me, UFO Not says, nice words, Steve. Yeah, you know, I didn't know. This has been on my to-do list for a while. I wanted to talk about this, but not quite sure how to approach that. I am called Paulie P. Mentions Nin, Nine Inch Nails. Yes. Trent Reznor is a poet and a prophet. Maybe, just maybe. Oh, I'm sorry. I wanted to get this one. Reemsey, they are putting angry pills in the water, I think. Yeah, people are really upset lately. UFO Not says honesty. It's a rare thing in UFO. Yeah. Jonaside, with some wisdom of his own, who says, expect the best, prepare for the worst. Yes, I have expected the worst, but I feel better being prepared, you know. I think too, even just building this place made me feel good because you know, I started building this place a year or two, year and a half at least, I guess, 2 years before the COVID thing hit. But while I'm building it, I was thinking, like, if something bad happens, this will be a great place for my family. And I'm so grateful and I'm so thankful that I can have this place to keep my family safe in the event of some big, huge chaos or societal issue, you know? The US is approaching critical mass. Robin Eaglesong, I agree with you. I think we're building steam, and what happens when when the steam keeps building, it's got to explode eventually. And it would not take much for a it would not take much for things to pop off. Would love to see how you constructed your cabin. You mentioned a wood cord style. Yeah, what I did is called cordwood masonry. Here, I'll show you some more of the cabin here. You can see this is all a typical log cabin is built, with the logs going horizontally. But this construction method is called cordwood masonry, and uh, the logs are put, vertically. And the reason that I chose this method of construction is because, um, let me get out of that light. The building the log cabins that you see, like if you Google log cabin, you see that typical log cabin with the logs stacked on top of one another and they're notched, you know. Can it be done by one man? Yes, but it's incredibly difficult. This is much easier for one guy to do. Those log cabins with those big long logs, you need 4 or 5 guys once you get high to keep getting them up and stacking them. You could do it alone if you have a crane or anyway. So for this cabin, I chose to use something called cordwood masonry, which is basically you're building walls, but instead of using bricks, you're using logs, and that's the gist of it. It worked out really well. I was able to do the whole project myself. I had no help. Well, my one neighbor, kind guy, real nice guy. Hi, Matt, if you're watching. He would see me slowing down because I was running out of wood. I had these stacks of these 2 foot thick logs. And so, but I kept running out, and he would see that I was running out and he would just go over to his huge wood pile. He has these huge logs stacked around his property that he gets, I think, from work. When they cut trees down, he takes them home in a dump truck. Anyway, he would go over there and he would chop me up like a couple of days worth of logs work and drop it off. But other than that, I built the entire cabin here myself, which is kind of crazy, but I'm proud of that. Let's see, Philip Blair. Every good American will wholeheartedly accept the will of the people. Governor Dewey, Republican candidate for press after losing 1944 mail-in vote. Losing 1944 mail-in vote. Okay. I didn't vote for Trump or Hillary, voted Libertarian, but I was excited that Trump won because I thought he might be interesting. Instead, he's just second-rate Hitler. Oh no, Reevesy. Yeah, he may be. I heard somewhere that he used to like Mein Kampf and he kept it in the nightstand, but I think that was one of his ex-wives that said that. So, yeah, ex-wife. Robin Eaglesong. It's never ever been the will of the people. Yeah, maybe not. You never know. So yeah, and I'm sorry tonight's kind of a downer, right? Like we had a lot of good fun last night though. Last night was fun. Thank you guys for helping me to do that. And I think that video is going to get quite a lot of traffic. Okay, let me see. No one you know. How do those logs hold up with rot? Are they cedar or cypress? No. Well, actually, some of them are cedar, but a very small percentage. Here's the thing. Everybody thinks, oh, that's going to rot, but it doesn't. Um, there are cabins built this way in Europe that are 2,000 years old, or I'm sorry, 1,000 years old, and they're still good. They're not rotted. Uh, this cabin is made from a mix of beech, birch, cherry, some cedar, some pine. I'm trying to think of anything else. I'm sure there's a few other types of trees. So basically, what I did is I went through my land and I chopped down every standing dead tree. And then, well, we also picked out of the woods here, like there was a bunch of trees that had fallen and were laying there. So any wood that we could salvage from that, we chopped them up and brought them back here. The thing is, it doesn't rot though. The key to this is that there has to be, you don't want water coming down the side of the wall of this kind of a wall. So the outside walls have to have a big overhang. So, and mine do. Well, the front doesn't yet, but it will. There's going to be a covered front porch, so I haven't gotten that far yet. But the side is there's a big overhang. It's like 2.5 feet overhang. And that keeps all of the water from going down that log face wall. They don't rot. And the good news is, if, for example, one of the logs rots in this whole thing, you get a sledgehammer and knock that log out, and you find a similar sized log and you replace it, mortar around the edges in the front and the back again, and you're good. So it's easy to fix if there is rot, but there should never be rot. Okay. If there's questions or comments for me, put them in all caps, please, friends. Reemsey says, vote Satan 2020. Why choose a lesser evil? Yeah. Paulie P, which guy is that? Because I follow many of those kind of guys. It could be one of a few people I'm thinking of. But my favorites are My Self Reliance. There's a gentleman named Boss of the Swamp. That's his channel. I like Wrangle Star, but I don't know. Lately, that guy's doing a lot of like everything is clickbait. Like, oh my God, this happened is in the title, and then his video doesn't really have anything to do with what's going on. But he's got great information, tool reviews. So yeah, I love channels where they're like building cabins and homesteads and things like that. Philip Blair, how do we know when to become hysterical? I would think that if you start seeing rioting and looting of food stores, there's a problem. There's going to be a problem. Satan stole that political slogan from Cthulhu. Could be. Yeah, could be. Yeah, so it rained on and off here all day, and like I was kind of pissed because I had some things to do outside that I really wanted to get to. My children are not here this weekend because that's another thing. They shut down every lake within a 45-minute drive of the cabin. So all the state parks closed all the lakes. And I believe they're saying it's because of bacteria levels, but other people have told me that they thought there was too many. Some of the state officials were there and they thought that there was way too many people at some of the state parks. They're closing them all down. If the lakes are closed, the state parks see very little traffic. Maybe people go into some of the hiking trails, but okay, let's see. Top 5 bullshitters in the UFO scene. Gee, now I think you can know who I would pick, Dominic. Corey Good and David Wilcock are at the very top of the list, followed very closely by, let's see, Stephen Greer. That would be number 3. Oh, no, wait. Number 3 would probably be this Peter Slattery guy. And then number 4 would be Stephen Greer. Who would I pick for number 5? Maybe Richard Dolan lately. Do you have any type of insulation in the ceiling or under the floor for added R value? Dan Hogan, no, actually. This room has a stone floor that's right on the ground. It was a stone, they're big, thick stones. But that was put right on the ground and cement between them. So there's no insulation whatsoever under a stone floor. I thought about like digging it out and putting insulation in and then putting wood down and putting the stone on top. But everybody up here, a few of my neighbors that I know here looked at it and they were like, no, you don't want to do that. Just put it right on the ground. It's going to be cold no matter what. So yeah, and the other room, the floor is not insulated under it, and I wish that it was because that floor gets pretty cold. It's a wood floor, and the ceiling we do have insulation though. We have plenty of it. It's R20 insulation in the ceiling, and I think I doubled it up in places. No matter who wins the election in November, there is going to be riots and mass rejection of the result from both sides. It's a scary time over there. Steve Ronan, yes, I truly believe that there's going to be mass rioting over the over the elections, and it's easy to see. I mean, look at how crazy everyone is, and like look at on your Facebook feed, your Twitter feed. There are people that spend 8 hours a day arguing with other people over whose candidate is the least evil, right? Like to me, it's a joke. We have to pick the lesser of two evils. So we have to choose between. We basically right now we have to choose between a fucking crazy, narcissistic idiot former reality star, or we have to pick between a man that basically has dementia and can't even speak straight. Those are our fucking choices. This is the best America has to offer, friends. This is the best America has to offer. It's bullshit. It's bullshit. Love that crazy laugh. Yeah, people keep saying that. I ought to laugh more. Alaska builder. He started in his 50s, somewhere in his 60s, lived there till his 90s. Can't remember his name. He recorded some of his work with 8mm. There's a documentary on it. Paulie P, you're thinking of Dick Prenicky. And I have that documentary, and he was a big inspiration for me building a cabin. And ask anybody that's built a cabin. They were partially inspired by that gentleman, Dick Prenicky, and God bless him, he's passed away. But he inspired probably tens of thousands of people to go out in the woods and build a cabin with his sharing. And he shared that before, this was so long ago. He shared his life like that before YouTube, before television shows even really were getting into this stuff. So yeah, he produced a documentary like My Life in Alaska, and it was a lot of wildlife, videos of him, how he built his cabin. It's great. If you're interested in that kind of thing, I highly recommend Dick Prenicky, and you can watch most of it on YouTube. Steve Ronan, everyone is so angry and aggressive, it seems. Yeah, it seems to be an uptick in crime as well. And what do you think's going to happen when you take away people's money for 6 months, their livelihood for 6 months, when you make them shutter their businesses for 6 months? People are going to be pissed off and not in a very good mood. I know people that are in I was complaining myself that like this thing destroyed my business and I had no finances for like 90 days, right? And how terrible that is. But I know people in even worse condition because maybe they're not blessed to have like a great wife like me who has a great job, and so they don't have somebody to work as partners with. And shit's worse, even worse for them because they're off on by themselves with no money, trying to survive through this shit. It's a shit show. Okay, Biden administration will be better for cannabis and our wild places. You depend on well water. Yeah, he may be better for cannabis. I don't know. I don't think Trump is very anti-cannabis. I don't, but he's definitely kind of anti-alcohol because his brother was an alcoholic, and I believe his father may have had some alcoholic tendencies. I don't know. I'm actually so glad I don't like Trump anymore. All he does is make promises to his base, but never does anything good for all Americans. Yeah, I kind of think the whole stimulus thing is a joke. You know, I haven't had income for 90 days. I got $1,200 from the government. Other countries are giving people like 80% of their paycheck until this is all over. Our country, fuck you. Hope you don't starve, bitch. You know, that's our country. Voted for abortions 52 times. I wasn't aware of that. You mean he voted for legislation that supports abortions 52 times? I think that's what they mean. Biden administration, yeah. Oh, Mark Tirana. I'm sorry, Mr. Comment. I'm catching back up here. Regardless of who wins, Soros has rioters ready and willing. You know, I don't know that I've ever believed that Soros. I've seen stuff online that people claim he's funding rioters and protesters, but I don't know if that's real, Mark Tirana. Is that really real that he pays protesters and people to riot? Never looked into the Soros conspiracies very much. No one you know. I agree with you. Politicians in general don't give a rat's ass about the people. They are there to make things good for big corporate entities. That I agree with, not small business or the public. Yeah, our government just fucked every small business owner in the country. Fuck them to the nines, dude. Fuck them right in their ass. Every small business owner just got fucked royally by our government. And since the big corporations own all those politicians, they were allowed to stay open. Okay, let's see. Trump appointed the most anti-cannabis member of the U.S. Senate as his Attorney General, Jeff Sessions. Oh, I didn't know that. Stephen Miller is in the inner circle. There's some heavy hate on cannabis. Yeah, those damn kids smoke pot and they smoke pot and protest. Fuck pot, right? Maybe I am voting for giant meteors and let's start over. Yeah, maybe it's the roaches' turn. Maybe it's the roaches' turn, right? Someday we'll be in the history books like the dinosaurs. Mark Tarana, and the random piles of bricks will be in place. Yeah, I saw those. I saw those pile of bricks, and I saw piles of bricks in Philadelphia, where that was the city that I moved out of. So they were in a lot of major cities, apparently. Out of Mind says, I'm still waiting for people to realize that the only electorates vote in the president. So all of this vote talk is just stupid. Yeah. Dan Hogan, didn't Trump sign the farm bill which legalized the production of hemp again? I believe that he did, yes. And I believe hemp is again legal to produce. Um, and we see I don't know, in my state, it's only legal for medical users. But when they first said you can get a medical card and go to a dispensary, it was very difficult to get a doctor to approve you. Um, and you had to really have a serious issue. Um, but now it seems like it's getting to be the point of just like California, where there's tons of these doctors. You go to them and you tell them anything, and they stamp you, and you go on your merry way, and you can legally purchase marijuana at the dispensaries for your medical needs. Yes, your medical needs. I call it sideways legalization. That's what I call it. And they want the tax revenue, and they want it tightly controlled. Um, I think the states which have legalized recreationally, things are a little different. I'm not quite up on it though. Steve Ronan, I don't understand the electoral college thing. Me neither. It seems to me to be a way that somebody with a lot of money and power can rig the thing their way. Uh, you know, yes, Reemsy, no one does. I don't understand it either. I don't understand these super delegates and how like they can vote against the popular vote and their candidate can win the state when the popular vote says no, we don't want that person. The super delegate can stand up and say these electoral college votes go to the other candidate. It doesn't, none of this makes any sense. Yes, Stephen Ronan. They try to teach us in school how it works, but it's very confusing, and I don't think most people really understand how it works. We don't know. We don't know. Just go and vote so you can feel like you did something. I am very fond of George Carlin, who used to say that the politicians are put there to give you the illusion of choice. You think you have a choice? You have no choice. You have no choice. The corporations own the government. That's what it is. That's basically the world we live in. The corporations have long since owned the Senate, the Congress, probably the president, the judges. They own it all. It's a big club and you ain't in it. They own it all. Think we just need to paint some psychedelic. Oh, I'm sorry. We just need to paint some psychedelic stuff on the side of a bunch of vans and RVs, smoke, drink, be merry, and slide in the mud when we can crank some jams on multi-synced Bluetooth speakers. Yeah, that would be a fun thing to do during the apocalypse. Paulie P, for sure. Hillary Clinton won the popular vote by 2.5 million votes, but Trump won. Yeah. Phil Blair says hemp looks like cannabis, and the federal government still schedules cannabis as being more dangerous than meth. Any president can change that with an executive order. Still waiting. Yeah, I was hopeful that they would change it. They actually rewrote the text about 37 years ago. Now people are fucking clueless. Yeah, I don't know how it works, and I don't know how you can win the popular vote and still lose the election. I think they should just make it the popular vote wins. That's my opinion. What do I know? I'm just some slob. Dan Hogan, watching this live chat and seeing people have disagreements without shitting on each other still makes me have hope for humanity. I agree with you, Mr. Hogan. Yeah, it's a listen, friends. It's great. It's okay to disagree. Let's have a discussion. Let's have a debate. But especially I see on Facebook and Twitter, like these people are vicious when they go after each other about, well, it's basically a contest of who's the bigger criminal. Well, Biden and his son stole all this money in Ukraine, and okay, and then Trump and his family. How many times has Trump declared bankruptcy, right? And I got to say this: I, for a time, worked in a company where it was my job to. I had to call and collect money from the vendors that owed our company money, and the Trump companies were the fucking worst. The fucking worst. Every time I had to call a Trump-owned company, they purchased from the company I worked for, like restaurant equipment and supplies. You know, all that shit you don't think about, like straws and napkins and all that dumb shit. Anyway, the Trump companies were the worst, man, the worst. And the CEO, the CFO, the chief financial officer of the company I worked for, would be calling me in her office constantly, telling me like you just shipped $10,000 to them. They're never gonna fucking pay us. They're gonna make us wait 6 months. I didn't know what you know. So, and anyway, I had to chase the Trump. The Trump. It was the casinos in Atlantic City that were buying from the company I worked for, and you had to beg them to get paid. I don't know how anybody runs a business like that and still pretends to be some great crack businessman, right? Like my company's very successful. Why don't you pay your vendors then, right? Why don't you pay those people that helped you build the freaking Trump Tower and build those casinos? He stiffs everybody he can, and listen, that's not being a tough business person. That's being an asshole, in my view. But hey, everybody knew. Listen. I am not a Trump supporter, but I will say I am thoroughly entertained by some of the shit that he does. He's the most entertaining president I can remember in a long time. He says the stupidest shit, you know, and this is the world we live in. The leader of the fucking free world thinks that you can inject disinfectant into yourself to kill a virus, right? Or use light. Maybe we could jam an ultraviolet light up our asses to get rid of COVID. It's He's a fucking reality star idiot. And he's running our whole country. Some may argue he's running it into the ground. I don't know. You know what? That's a tough job. I don't I wouldn't want it. Okay, friends. So any questions or comments for me, please put them in the live chat. Oh, Paranormal Hood Live Radio is here, and I believe that is Smoke King. So welcome, Smoke King. Good to see you. We're talking about real cheerful stuff here tonight, like depending what may be the impending apocalypse coming our way. But I hope I'm wrong. I truly hope that I'm wrong. Mark Tirana says, "Come on, Illuminati, bring on the alien invasion. COVID is boring." Yeah, you know what? We just had fucking tornadoes, right? Or hurricane. I'm not sure if it was a hurricane or a tornado, one of those two. But it was really a bad storm, and I blew it off because I'm just like, fucking tornado, whatever. All this COVID shit's going on, and then your phone starts going off with that emergency alert shit, and I'm like, fuck, it's a fucking tornado, whatever. It was a fucking tornado. And there was down trees in my neighborhood, and it looked like a waterfall coming down. We have these big windows in the front. It looked like a waterfall coming down these big bow windows for hours and hours. It was, and the power kept going on and off in my house. It was pretty funny. Dan Hogan, I still haven't watched last night's show. Did David Wilcock make a special appearance? Oh, yeah. For legal reasons, I have to say this. David Wilcock did not appear on my show. David Wilcox appeared on my show. David Wilcox. Very similar. He looks just like him. I don't know, but no, it wasn't the actual David Wilcock. It was David Wilcox. And anytime in that stream that I said David Wilcock, I meant to say David Wilcox. With Australia, the USA is our daddy and England is our mummy. Yeah. Australia is a cool place. You guys are cool people, man. Brad Gray, we are too scared to leave the nest. Jonaside says, Dan, go watch now. We will wait. I don't think I'm doing a stream that long, friends. Yeah. Yeah, so things are going good here at the cabin. One of the other things I should mention is that I'm building a greenhouse on the south facing side of the cabin. And I'm doing that for a few reasons. One, the winter here is very, very long, and that may help grow some crops. I could easily grow green beans or something in there. Um, and I could do that most of the months of the year, probably without any heat source, just just a thermal oven that will become. And the other reason that I'm doing that is I'm stealing the design of Earthship House. They have big glass, in the front, and they face the building south facing. My building is not facing south facing, but I can put a greenhouse on the south facing wall, and then hopefully when it's winter, it will be very warm in there, even in the middle of winter, and I can open the door between the cabin and the greenhouse and let all that hot air in. It should cut down on the amount of firewood that we need to burn here, or propane, at least in half. At least that's what I'm told by somebody that did a similar project. So, uh, Brad Gray, yeah, we cool, but our politicians suck. Yeah, well, like I said before, seems like politicians suck everywhere. So at least it's not just the United States that these idiots are in charge. Because literally, that's what I feel like. I feel like the lunatics are running the asylum. That's what we have. We have idiots and lunatics. But I will say, as far as President Trump, I wish for the best outcome. I do. I think he's a fucking idiot, and I think he's made a lot of stupid decisions. But I just hope the best for our country. You know, um, it's It's a scary time to live. But I kind of feel like it's us to blame. Well, really, it's the people who voted for Trump to blame. But I don't know. What does everybody think would anything be any different right now if Hillary Clinton was the president? I don't think so. I think I think it might be worse, right? I don't know. Mark Tarana says, in Australia, we have the same issue as the US during the election. We also have the choice between a douche and a turd sandwich. Yeah. Pick the lesser of the two evils here. Who's the stupider one, right? The Prime Minister of New Zealand seems cool. Yeah, I've noticed that the leadership in Europe I tend to like better. And in the Scandinavian countries like Denmark, Iceland, uh, they seem like they know what they're doing, and they actually seem like they care about the people that they represent, and that they're supposed to be supposed to be leading. There's something about all these Scandinavian countries too, with their social programs, that's just amazing. Like, yeah, they pay more in taxes, but they don't have to worry about health care. Some of those countries, they'll even like whatever your hobby is, they help pay for it. Like if you want to go build, you know, model airplanes, there's a place that you can go, and the government sort of helps fund that. You want to play chess, there's chess houses, and just a different kind of society they have over there. And it seems like they actually care about their people. Here, it's dog eat dog, capitalist, fight for your life, do everything you got to do, work two jobs to try to get ahead. It's dog eat dog here in the United States. And that's the shady side of capitalism that we don't really, everybody that I know that's like, rah, rah, yeah, fuck socialism. Uh, we're capitalists. Capitalism works. Socialism never works. Well, it works in some countries. And this whole capitalist society is basically like more for me, less for him. Fuck him. And that's the world that we live in here in the United States. It's not that that bullshit propaganda that we were taught in school is not real. And again, to quote George Carlin, it's called the American dream because you got to be asleep to believe it. And I believe that. It's ridiculous here. And I don't think, let me ask a question to the live chat. Is it possible to become a millionaire and do it completely morally and ethically without ever cheating someone, ripping somebody off, or hurting somebody else in order to get there? And number two, is it possible to become a billionaire without exploiting workers, without ripping anybody off, without cheating anybody out of money? Is it possible to become a billionaire completely morally and ethically without hurting anyone else or cheating anyone else? I don't think it is. I don't. Maybe the millionaire. Maybe you could do the millionaire if you were really a good person and you really tried hard not to fuck with anybody else on your way up. Maybe. But to become a fucking billionaire, you got to fuck everybody. You listen, and it drives me crazy that some of these people are venerated like heroes. Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs. Oh, he changed the world. He's such a hero, and he was a billionaire. What people don't talk about is the child slaves that made those products. And Apple knew, friends. Apple knew. Apple knew. There's child slave labor over there soldering those boards together as fast as we could sell them. They knew. But that's capitalism. Fuck these people. We're going to take advantage of them. Fuck them. And I'm going to make shit tons of money. That's capitalism in a nutshell, at least the way I've seen it work in the United States. Reemsey says millionaire, yes. I'm sorry. Reemsey says millionaire, yes. Easy. Billionaire, probably not. Yeah, I would agree with that. Genocide, sports, music, actors, millionaires. Yeah, well, they probably didn't hurt anybody to get their $1 million paycheck. Oh, yeah, Paul McCartney is a billionaire. He is the only one I can think of. Yeah, he probably never really fucked anybody over or hurt anybody to gain his billionaire status. But most people, I would think that they have to do morally and ethically questionable things to get to that finish line. And I saw this meme that I thought was funny. It's like, no more billionaires. Once you get to that 99999, we just give you a plaque that says you won capitalism, and any more money that you make for the rest of your life just goes to the homeless people or something, right? That would be the fair thing to do. And I also I see this stuff around like Jeff Bezos, right? He's the richest man in the world. Like, couldn't he do something about world hunger? Couldn't he do something about homeless veterans? If I had that kind of money, I would be running around the world fixing shit, right? If I had billions. And we just don't see it really. I mean, I guess there's some notable examples of some people that have become billionaires and then given a lot to charity or try to do something good with the money, but mostly I see greed. Dan Hogan, they did take advantage of child labor and paying low wages, but ultimately China allowed that. China's rules of doing business in their country are ridiculous. Yeah, but listen, Dan, if it's legal, but it's still unethical, should you do it? And the arguments that these capitalists supporting people make, the arguments go something like this. Well, we didn't want to move our production plant from the United States and manufacture in China, but all of our competition is doing it, so we had to stay competitive, and for the benefit of our shareholders. It's a morally reprehensible argument to make that you just had to fuck everybody over because everybody else is doing it. I don't know. I may face some of these problems myself. I'm still working on my computer prototype, and I'm determined though that I won't have child slave labor making my products, except for my son, who I'm going to force to sit there with a fucking solder that board. I got orders to fill, son. You know. I have no idea what to think about Elon. He seems cool, but then look at the person he fornicated with. Yeah, I don't know. I'm a fan of Elon Musk just because I'm a science nerd and I think that guy's doing incredible stuff. If I could change places with one guy for a day, it might be him, just to see what his life is like. Robert Eagle Song says something's really off about Elon Musk. Yeah, I don't know. He seems a little quirky, but isn't every brilliant man a little quirky? He's rich enough too, by the way, that you don't call him strange or off. You call him eccentric. Bought and sold by the globalists. Are you talking about Elon Musk, Steve Ronan? I didn't know that he was bought and sold by the globalists, but he may be. You never know. All geniuses are weird dudes. Yeah, I think being incredibly mentally gifted comes with some, let's say, less than spectacular side effects, right? Everyone I've known that was extremely brilliant was extremely strange or quirky or call it eccentric. Bernie Sanders wanted employees at Disneyland to earn a living wage and not live in their cars. That's still capitalist, just not vulture capitalism. Truthseekers, and good on you, Robin Eaglesong. Yeah, I mean, that's another thing we have. How much money does the CEO of Disney make? How does that person sleep at night knowing that they're paying slave wages at their amusement parks to the people that are actually doing the work to generate all that revenue? It's just not fair. And you're right. I guess, listen, you're right. There is a difference between capitalism and vulture capitalism. Vulture capitalism is the problem. But the other problem is that it seems like there's not much true capitalism left in the world, and everybody, it seems to me, since the 80s at least, have gone over to the vulture capitalist side of doing business. There are individuals who never felt the same after the Berlin Wall came down. Yeah, you could be right. Robin Eaglesong says, launching all those satellites to bring internet to the furthest reaches of the globe. Truth seekers, just why? Yeah, I don't know, but the microsatellites are a big new business. Look up microsatellites. They're going to be the future. Microsatellites. Mark Tirana, I'm a qualified electronic techs with 30 years experience. I'll solder your boards. Great, Mark. You just volunteered. You don't know what you're in for, dude. You do not know what you're in for. Okay, Musk launched 50 plus again today. People should be freaking out, but meh, right under the radar. Well, again, out of mind, he may have launched 50 satellites, but that sounds deceptive. When you hear that Elon Musk launched 50 satellites, you go, wow, that's a lot of satellites to launch in one day. What are all those satellites for? Well, again, look up micro satellites. That's what he's launching. These things are like the size of shoe boxes. And they're very advanced new type of satellites that will have various capabilities that some of these old huge, you know, satellites the size of a Volkswagen bus used to do. These new microsatellites can do the same things, and they're the size of a shoebox, or some I've seen even like half the size of a shoebox. So 50 of those, not such a big deal, I would think. Reemsey says, I hope those satellites improve my internet. Yeah. Who cares what other side effects, Reemsey? It could be mass surveillance satellites, but as long as your internet is better, right? Fuck the rest of the world. Who cares? Who cares what they're doing with them? Yep. Yeah. I'm not big into the, I don't know. I don't worry very much about all these satellites being launched because it's kind of like there's nothing I can do about it. I'm not sure what they're doing up there with all those satellites, but there's nothing I can do about it. They're going to keep launching them. Brad Gray, I believe the children are our future. Teach them well, let them lead the way. Boy, that was in every dance that I went to, that song when I was a kid. Stephen, if the apocalypse does happen, can we come and crash at the cabin asking for about 30 friends? I don't know, Dan Hogan. We'll see. I don't think I can accommodate 30 people, but I may accommodate a couple of people with the right skill set that can help around here. KB, yeah, we want internet. Sure, yeah. Reem C says, I am pleased to let them watch me whack off. If I could play games and watch movies and stream music at the same time. John Ditto. Steve Ronan, I know. Why can't Bill Gates, if he is honest in trying to help Africa, just build up their economy to the standard of near enough to our worlds? There's so many billionaires now that they could do it. Yeah, they could. I guess it would require a great deal of sacrifice and coordination and cooperation, but I don't know. I just see that amount of money and maybe I'm wrong, but because I've never had that kind of money, but I just see these people with this massive amounts of money, and I wonder why I don't know. Maybe they're just not generous people, right? Maybe you don't get to be a billionaire if you're a generous person. Me, if I had that kind of money, I'd be trying to change some things. These schools have endowments as well as the church. There's money, just have to unearth the foundations harboring it. Yeah, you could be right, because I think some of these billionaires give a lot of money to charity. So, you know, it is what it is, though, right? So, friends, I see we're at about an hour and a half, and I have some other things to do this evening. So, I think we're going to call it a quick one tonight. And I should be back tomorrow night with another show with a more usual topic for our show. I'll just say that. But I wanted to, this has been on my list of things to talk about for quite some time. I thought, why not give sort of a heads up to people who may not have thought about some of these things and the possibilities of some sort of major event changing our lives even more in the coming months. And again, it's my hope that I'm wrong. And if I am wrong, well, I'm just going to have some extra food and supplies at the cabin for a while, which is never a bad thing. So, friends, until next time, straight from the apocalypse cabin, my name is Stephen Cambion. Good night.